What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Think Outside the Blue Box. I'm Anthony Rivera. I'm the lead videographer and editor here at BlueBox Digital. And welcome to the podcast. This is a podcast about creative journeys, the hustlers, the people who are out there following their dreams in hopes to inspire you to follow your dreams. And today I'm joined by a super creative guy. I've been following him on Instagram for a little while now, and I'm fascinated by his work, Mr. Hinson the Healer. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm super stoked to be here. It is a extremely professional setup, which is very cool. It's my first time not just talking into headphone microphones or something like that, you know.
I've been on a few of those podcasts where you just kind of show up and it's just two mics and a recorder. Yeah,
definitely. Or just you have to hold the phone up to your face, you know.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the Taj Mahal of of podcasting studios. We met a couple weeks ago actually at a mural painting that you were helping out with. Kind of just
super randomly, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was just asked.
I love how things work out, man.
Yeah. You know, the same thing happened with the event that I was at last night. The influencer, her manager just randomly was stopping at a Domino's Pizza one night, which was right next to a venue that I was live painting at. And he was like, what's this guy just doing out in the parking lot with a bunch of spray paint and this big wooden wall, you know?
Let's go check him out.
Yeah. And so it was very similar vibes to when we met, you know, which is cool. Yeah. But she had asked me the muralist that, you know, was working on the wall had asked me to come out just to show her a few things with spray paint. And I think you were there to pick up a painting.
Yeah, she had just been on the podcast a couple days before that, and she had promised me a painting, but you know I had to go out there and get it. So I was like, yeah, I'll drive. I don't care.
Yeah, for sure.
I love your stuff. So.
Yeah.
She's probably already live by the time this goes live. So it's Swirly Painter. Go check out her episode. We had a really cool conversation with her. Mm-hmm. But yeah, she was working on a mural, and she reached out to you, and how did you guys meet?
Yeah, I was just in the paint shop one day, you know, and the guy that owns it, Austin, is he's this old school New York guy, you know. He owned a graph shop back in New York and decided to move here and kind of do the same thing because St. Pete has a big mural scene and everything, you know.
The artistic scene in St. Pete is so much better than Tampa.
Yeah, and so I just kind of hang out in there and try to get what knowledge I can from him and years of doing it and stuff like that. So she came in there one day and she started asking questions, and some of them I knew the answers to. And I try not to butt in normally when he's talking to other people, you know, but I knew, you know, what she was talking about. I was like, oh, you should do this, this, and this, because I was just kind of excited at that point that I knew exactly, you know, what to say.
I know the answer to that.
Yeah, exactly. And she was like, okay, that, you know, that's cool, perfect. And I know she was a little apprehensive about it because when you're trying out a new technique, especially on a commissioned wall, it can be a little bit intimidating.
Paid for this, yeah.
Yeah. So she ended up messaging me later, and she was like, "Hey, I did it, but I'm not sure I did it right." You know, and so I was like, "Well, you know, maybe try it like this, or I can just come out if that's easier. If it's hard to understand what I'm talking about, because sometimes it's hard to translate that over text. Yeah. You know, because you're talking about a 3D medium in
it's an abstract concept.
Over Instagram, you know. So I was like, yeah, you know, I'll come out tomorrow, and that was the day we met. I was there earlier in the day. I was happy with it, but then I was looking at the pictures and I was like, there's a couple little things, you know, that I would like to tweak. And I was like, are you going to be back later in the day? She was like, yeah. You know, and so I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to come back and just fix those couple things.
And that's when you guys headed back out there. Oh, that's cool. Mm-hmm. That's cool. Yeah, it worked out, man. It was meant to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like how things just kind of work out like that, man, because it's not the first time that's happened to me. I just kind of show up and there's somebody there that does something cool and I just reach out to them. I've actually done... just recently, I did a music video with a guy that I showed up at a wedding, and he was just playing violin just to, you know, he was doing his own thing, you know, and I was like, this is so freaking cool. So I went up to him, kind of like the person went up to you, and just kind of reached out to him and just said, look, I'll make you a music video. I think you're super talented. Let's work. Let's collaborate. Mm-hmm. And it just worked out, man.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love stuff like that. It's always those the random relationships, you know. Those are the ones that are the most fun because it's not forced, you know, especially when you're talking to creatives. there's some people have the mentality going into it of, I want to network, I want to meet new people, I want to do this, that, and they treat it very much like a business, which is like a super legitimate way to go about it. But I think when you're so obsessed with the creation aspect of it, like a lot of people from the community that I'm a part of are, and less about the business aspect of it, then those genuine relationships where you just kind of meet people serendipitously is what really ends up mattering, and what you end up having fun with.
Yeah. And it expands your art. It expands your audience. It's, I know a lot of artists are kind of reclusive. Like they just kind of internalize everything. They don't really socialize with anybody. They just kind of express themselves on canvas. Yeah. But that networking is kind of important, man.
Yeah, it's I think there's like a fine balance of stuff. I do know some people where it's like all pretty much a business. And it works out to varying degrees. Somebody that does it really well is actually, his Instagram is Wayward Walls. And he, before I met him, I probably would have told you that it doesn't work out great for everybody, when you just look at it from a business perspective. Yeah. But he started out looking at it from a business perspective. And then he found his own like creative style and path from there. And, he was on HGTV recently because of it. And so the way he's done it is like just very well put together. And, so that really opened my eyes to the fact that you can do it right from that perspective. But, I would say I'm pretty much the opposite. Like when I started, I was really bad, like everybody is, because it's not like especially with spray paint, it's not like you can't be born good at it.
Yeah, no, everything takes practice.
Yeah, especially because, what the general public knows about spray paint tends to be kind of like a point and click thing. Like most people go to Home Depot and just want to repaint some piece of furniture that they might have bought for cheap or something like that. So in that instance, it is kind of a point and click thing, and it takes a while to build up those skills and start getting good at it. And once I started to really explore those roads, I kind of came up with the mindset of, if I get good at this, like really good at this, then I'll kind of become undeniable and I won't have to deal so much with the business stuff, because people will just start to invite me to things and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because the whole goal was never to be a businessman. If I wanted to be that, I would have kept being an insurance agent, which is what I was doing before. Yeah.
I know when you and I first met, you told me a story about how, you still keep in contact with a lot of your friends from school, and they're off doing, professional things, but you're the only one still creative. And I love that, because it's like you're the only one that really retained that creativity and still pursue it to this day. Like, that's inspiring.
Yeah. I didn't really have a choice,
Yeah.
I tried to go the adult professional route, and it was funny. I was sitting in an office one day, and I was an insurance agent, doing well, and I was staring out the window at these construction workers. They were like working in the middle of the road, I think, laying a new pipe, digging something up,
Outside the office?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And my boss walks in and like catches me kind of daydreaming out the window, and he sits down and he's like, it's okay. I used to stare out the window too and think about how grateful I was I didn't have to be them, like working out in the hot sun and everything. And I was like, oh, I can't do this forever, because I was daydreaming about being them.
Yeah.
Like
it was the opposite. Like, I want to be there.
Yeah. And that's when I kind of realized, like, oh, I can't do this. Yeah.
Did you quit, or did you?
I did. Yeah. I think it was
an insurance job, right? You said?
Yeah. I think it was 2 days later.
Yeah.
That I quit. 2 days after that conversation.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I just straight up walked in. I was there a little bit early. And of course he showed up late that day, because I was hoping to catch him before everybody came into the office, to just be like, hey, I'm gone. Bye. And so of course everybody was there, and I said I had to talk to him. And I think people kind of knew what was up, and he gave me the whole speech of like, I think you're making a big mistake. And,
of course, yeah.
And I was like, I don't think so.
No.
You know, because
They don't see what you see.
yeah, well, I think very few people spend enough time with themselves to understand like what they really want in life, you know, and once you do find that and you realize that it's like all you can think about, and you love it so much that you're willing to become self-disciplined and motivated and you know, go through the whole brutality of the learning process when it comes to learning, you know, any type of new skill or anything like that. Once you realize that that's what you want, then that's all you're going to be able to think about, and you're probably not going to be happy doing anything else.
Yeah. I kind of went through that too, man.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, this is all I could think about, man. This is my passion right here.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
hopefully you can tell.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think you accumulate this type of professionalism without, you know, really having those feelings. Yeah.
Yeah, this is literally all I can think about, man. From the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep, it's literally just video content creation, storytelling, you know, just the creative process.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. From the perspective of like a videographer, right? Because I've always been curious.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling you before, it's like ceaselessly interesting to me.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about like your creative process or just like being creative in general, what do you have to what exactly do you have to focus on? You know, because I know for 2D mediums, like I'm very heavy with critiquing myself on, you know, technical skills, conceptual skills, things like that. But videography seems so much more abstract to me, you know, because you do have the technical aspect of it, of course, you know. It
is 50-50, man.
Yeah.
It's 50% technical, 50% artistic.
Yeah.
You kind of have to have that in between. Yeah, and it's on the physical side, you know, it's on the shoot side, it's more of like camera angles, lighting, like that kind of thing. The just setting the right mood on the frame.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. That's where I kind of get my creativity from, because when I'm on set, it's all on the fly. Like there's nothing on paper or anything.
Yeah.
And then whenever I get into the editing, that's when the creativity just explodes, man, because everything comes together in the editing.
Yeah, because you're like, at that point you're just focused on telling a story.
Exactly.
Yeah, so everything that makes sense. So for you, it's almost like two separate stages. It's like you have the whole technical stage beforehand, like before you get into the creative stage, and then once you get all that out of the way, then it's like just purely a creative thing.
It is because it doesn't matter what the source material is. It doesn't matter what was captured there. I can make you laugh. I can make you cry. I can make you with you know, my creativity and how I put it together and the music that I put to it and the colors that I choose. It's all of it, man. And it's meant to induce emotion. It's meant to, you know, make you empathetic to whatever story I'm telling.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that aspect, man.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
I love it because there was my cousin, he actually went to film school, and he was telling me that one of the classes that he took was sound design, and it was they pretty much gave you a trailer, an existing trailer for a movie that's super famous or whatever, and they said, okay, this is a spy genre. I want you to make it a comedy, just with sound design. So they take the trailer, they lower the volume of everything. It's just completely muted, and then you put in the right audio, the right music, the right sound effects, the right dialogue to make it funny, you know. And it's so powerful how audio can have that much effect on something that's already made. You know?
Yeah.
And that's the kind of creativity that I love.
Yeah. So that's kind of how they instill that type of creativity into you when you're learning the process, is by forcing you to not worry about the technical stuff and just worry about all that creativity.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's really cool. They do a very similar thing with drawing. So when I went to college, it was, I think they called it like classical studio arts with art history. So it was like a dual major.
Nice.
And one of the things that they do, especially for people that they feel are very strong technically but might be struggling creatively, is they have you do a series of one-line drawings. So one-line drawings are essentially like, they'll have a figure, still life, nude model, and they'll tell you, you know, you have to do a figure drawing, but you're not allowed to lift your pencil up off the paper.
Oh, that's cool.
You know, at any point in time, but you have to complete the whole thing. And they'll normally put a time limit on it too, to make sure that you're not just like stopping and thinking about where you're going next.
Gotcha.
And they'll have you fill up like whole sketchbooks with it. And that's a way to kind of force that creativity into somebody that might have the technical skills, but they're struggling to bring that out of themselves, you know.
That's cool.
It sounds really similar, not necessarily like the exact method, but as far as like the process, you know what I mean, of like ingraining that into somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I think everything can be taught. Do you think creativity can be taught?
I think to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think from an artist perspective, I think the only thing you really need to be an artist is just to have the need to create. Because I think whatever medium you choose, it can all be learned. You know, you just need that need to to create.
Yeah. It has to be strong enough to transform itself into discipline, really. You know, I think that a lot of those like more like masculine words, you know, I think people in the art community kind of avoid, you know, but I don't really think it's like a masculine thing. I think it's just like a human thing, you know. So that real strong need to create, you know, you can really want it, but if you don't have the discipline to force yourself to fill up sketchbooks, or in my case, like do a practice wall every day or something like that, then it won't really like flourish into anything, you know. So I do think it starts with creativity, but I think that need for creativity has to be strong enough to like seep into all the other aspects. Yeah.
Where did you start? I know you said you have a practice wall every day. I know you do that online.
Yeah. So I post, you know, pictures, videos of my practice wall every day.
So you do one entire wall.
Yeah. It's 8 foot by 8 foot. Nice. Yeah. 8 foot by 8 foot wall, once, if not twice. Even when I'm doing a gallery show, even when I have live painting later that night, or even today, you know.
Nice.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like you just have to, if you really want to get better, you kind of have to force yourself to just consistently do it, you know, even if you don't want to, or you're busy, or even if you have to do something more simple because of a time constraint or something like that.
Still, yeah. Just work that part of your brain out. I know they say mastery takes 10,000 hours of something to master it. So if you're doing one every day, bro, like you've got your 10,000 hours, man.
Yeah. I always thought that was, you know, an interesting quote, because you know, Salvador Dali was, I believe, asked, if not about that, something similar to that at one point. And then they ended up asking him if he had created his best piece yet, you know, because he was starting to get a little bit older. And he was like, well, no, I'm going to keep improving, you know, every time I make art. I strive to make a masterpiece, but when I make something that's perfect is probably going to be the day that I die. You know, and what's ironic about that is he did die immediately after finishing a painting in his studio.
Get out of here. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Which one?
I have no idea what the name of it is. No.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, I got brain damage back in high school, so like names, dates, just numbers in general, not going to happen. Yeah.
I'm horrible with names.
Yeah.
No, but that's cool. I didn't know that about Dali.
Yeah, I always thought that was super interesting, you know, because I think artists are forever chasing that title of like mastery, you know.
To be perfect. Yeah.
But it's never going to happen. But you have to try, you know. That's what's so crazy about it. You know, like,
I think perfection just doesn't exist, man. It's just better. You're just better than you were 10 years ago, you know.
But if you don't strive for it, then you'll never make progress towards it. But at the same time, you're chasing something that doesn't exist.
Exactly.
So it's, you know, it's at times you feel kind of like a dog chasing your tail, you know.
A little bit, yeah.
But I still love it.
But it's regardless. The journey, man. Yeah, it's the journey for me. It's not the destination. I think the showing the progress, and a lot of people say, why don't you take down your first music video you ever did? Like, no, I want people to see how far I've come. Yeah. Like how crappy that was. Yeah. And how great my stuff is now, you know. It's, and it, like you said, is a constant, ever evolving process. So I'm still getting better. I'm still learning new techniques, still, you know, developing my craft. Yeah. Yeah. A couple of the first things I did were like
so bad, you know, and I will show those to people. I think there's only like one thing I've ever made where I'm like, no, I don't want to show this to anybody, you know. And unfortunately, it was like in a very public fashion.
Oh, wow.
You know, and I wasn't even new.
Was it a mural, like a big mural? On
it was a competition. Nice. So there was, there's a graph shop called Backroom in Tampa. And they were hosting a 3-week long like mural painting art competition. I think the walls were like 6 feet by 3 feet, right? And it was with a tattoo convention called Ink the Bay. And the winner, there would be like one winner of each round, and then you would go on and get to paint at the convention.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And so I competed in all 3 weeks. The first week, I did pretty well. I, at the time, I had all of the building blocks of like really good can control, but I hadn't really discovered that I had them yet, you know? So I was kind of using them separately and not really like combining them to be one thing and make like actually interesting things, you know?
Gotcha.
So like the concept was there and the technique was there, but I just hadn't really discovered my own way to combine everything yet. So I did okay, you know? The second week, dude, are we allowed to curse on here?
Yeah, absolutely.
I ate shit in a glorious fashion.
Oh my God. You still have a picture of that? I want to see that.
Yeah, I do have a picture of it.
Dude,
I'll show you. Yeah. It was so bad. I don't know what the fuck happened. It was so bad. I like, you know, I cried in the car on the way home because I was like, I know what I'm doing. What happened?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So it was so bad. And, but that really lit a fire under me. And then I ended up coming back in the third round and I did something that I was really, really heavy with. And that ended up being like a big kicking off point for me, realizing that I did have all those building blocks and I just didn't realize that I was ready to put them together yet, you know? And so the third round, I was really happy with what I did. And from there on out, I was able to kind of push the combination of those things like further and further, you know?
You know, it's funny you say that because I think I kind of equate it to a comedian bombing on stage. It's like you kind of have to go through that to get that experience.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what I ended up...
that kind of point of reference.
Yeah. That's what I ended up like consoling myself with is like literally that metaphor. You know, you hear comedians talking about bombing and it being like the most miserable thing they've ever felt. And I was like, okay, so I'm not the only person that's ever felt this way.
Exactly.
Because this was absolutely
it's part
horrible.
of the process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you can't get to a certain level without having to go through that. Mm-hmm. You know, it's
the worst part was, so I did an eye. It was an eye. And all my practices were good, man.
Yeah.
That's what really got me more about it. I did like 4 practice walls for it. And they were all really solid. And the worst one and the worst out of all 3 of my rounds was the only one that ended up following me around because for some reason that was the only one out of the 3 that I did that they didn't paint over before they took them all to the convention.
So it was there.
It was the only one. And I remember I had a booth at the convention. The guy that was organizing it really liked the fact that I kept showing up to the rounds and he liked my work. So he asked me if I wanted a booth there. And I was like, yeah, dope, you know. And I was sitting in my booth, live painting. I was just doing like oil pastels, you know, to pass the time. And this guy comes walking up and he was like, hey, you know, are you Hinson? And I was like, yeah, hey, what's up? You know, thinking that maybe he knew me from Instagram or something like that. And I didn't know that they had kept the eye at this point. And he goes, man, I just saw the eye you did down there. It's great. And my heart dropped
out of here.
Dude. I immediately was like transported back to that moment of like just pure failure, you know? And I was like, I didn't know what to say for a second. I was like, man, I really appreciate
it. Are you
it.
being sarcastic?
Yeah. I was like, but I'm a like extremely honest person to a fault. And I was like, but I got to tell you, it's really bad, man. You know, I'm glad you like it, but it is really bad. You know, and I was like, this is the stuff I normally do, and was like showing him other stuff, and he thought that was really cool, you know, and he ended up being a super cool guy, but like it was, I just can't not be honest with myself.
But that goes to show you, man, is like some shit for you might be something great for somebody else.
No, it was very bad. No. Yeah.
At least you're honest about it.
Yeah. It's, I do think everybody has their own taste in everything, right?
Yeah.
But then this is a conversation I have a lot with other artists, is like the professional way to critique your work or other people's work and the helpful way, right? So you can have your own taste when it comes to art, but there are certain technical things that you can't get around, right? So even if you're doing something that's like more illustrative or graphic, your light sources might not always be consistent because you're kind of manipulating them to add definition in areas where there wouldn't normally be shadows, things like that, right? But to a certain degree, you do have to have some realistic shadows. Otherwise, everything's just going to look wonky and a little bit messed up. Yeah. So even when you are talking about like those more abstract styles, it does have to adhere, somewhat to the rules. And if I were to have critiqued this piece professionally, it followed almost none of them.
Oh, wow.
And I like to think I know most of them, so it's one of those things. Yeah, you can definitely have your own preferences when it comes to art, but
it was enough to make an impact that he remembered your name.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was. I think the saving grace was the background.
Yeah.
Because the eye was so bad that I was like, I have to do something that draws people's attention away from what's supposed to be the center of attention.
Don't look at the eye. Look at everything else.
Yeah. So I did. Have you ever seen Japanese traditional tattoos?
Yeah.
So the background primarily is what's called wind bars. They're basically like the big black bars that kind of connect everything together, and they gradiate from blank skin to black to almost make your blank skin look like white, right? To create a 3D effect. And I ended up doing a bunch of like big black and white wind bars through the back because I was like, okay, these are so big and bold that people might not notice that what's supposed to be the center of attention isn't good, And so I don't think it was the actual eye that he liked. I think it was
everything else.
The big wind bars. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It had redeeming qualities.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. If I'm gonna say it was bad, I can at least admit where it was right, and that was the thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool, man. Well, I'm glad they left it up then.
Yeah.
In that case.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I got to meet a bunch of guys that I talked to, on a either daily or almost daily basis, because of that competition. And
nice.
One thing that's cool, especially about the graffiti community, is a lot of the older guys are people that have been doing it for longer. If they see that you're out there trying, if you're out there painting or anything, they will give you pieces of advice, and it's one of those things where it might not seem like much at first, but you listen to the first one or two and they see you actually put it into practice, and then all of a sudden the floodgates kind of open.
You get more,
Yeah. And so that's something that I was able to do because of that competition. I went out there and I was doing these abstract faces at the time, so I get my faces up on the wall. And all the graffiti guys were side-eyeing me a little bit, because a lot of graffiti guys aren't fans of people that aren't doing letters, that aren't writers. And so I get my faces up on the wall, and I knew that was kind of going to be the vibe. But then, so when people use spray paint to make tags, there's a type of tag that uses big flared out letters, which is essentially where you start far away from the wall and it's like a big open spray pattern. And as you come to the bottom of the letter, you taper everything down to like a fine point, right? And it creates like this big old flare. So I decided I was going to do these big flared out letters around my faces because graffiti writers are like weirdly obsessed with those big flared out letters. Myself included. They're just very fun to watch, And so I did these big flared out letters, and all of their heads kind of like turned, and I saw a couple eyebrows raise, and then they all like walked over to me and were like, started talking to me and
like, okay, you're legit now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was the letters. And I was joking with my wife beforehand that I was like, I'm going to do these letters and then all of them are going to talk to me. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
I didn't know it was like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They like almost kind of like look down on you for not doing letters.
No, I wouldn't say look down, but it's you know, it's a hard community, man. You know, it's people get in arguments with each other frequently, and you know,
over
it's
like the technical skills, or
more like what crews you run with, where you paint,
gotcha,
what you paint, how good you are, how often, how big, you know. And so it's a very harsh community. And then on top of all that, you also have, you know, legal repercussions and,
of course,
you know, things like that. So I think because of a combination of those things, the culture is just a little bit more harsh than most. But I think that's a good thing, to be honest, because it's something that's so founded on technical ability, right? Because spray paint is so complex, and not only that, but you have to do it fast, and it has to be clean.
And so many nuances.
Yeah, that I think the only reason we know what we know about spray paint today, and we have it as a tool in the way that we do, is because that community was kind of like a pressure cooker for so long. You know, all of these people that were able to develop all of that. There's a quote from Shawshank Redemption. It's like, geology is the study of pressure and time. And that's all it takes, really, pressure and time.
I like that.
You know, and that's like, I think that sums up like why it's good that the graffiti community is so harsh, you know, because I don't think we would have or know what we do without that culture. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you guys push each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like, even, you know, even the beefs, like, that's part of the reason too. Like, you know, people go out around like crossing out each other's names and.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Yeah. It gets intense, man.
Damn.
And people get mad about it. You know, it's like, it's a real thing. And there's rules to it. You know, like, there's a lot of rules within the community. Just like, you know, they're not like written down anywhere, but everybody knows.
Yeah, it's unspoken rules.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's one of those things like, you know, somebody breaks a rule or somebody thinks somebody broke a rule, and then there's a beef. And then all of a sudden it's a race to the top of, you know, biggest, best, most, you know, covering up the other person. And
oh my God.
Because of that, you get like, you know, you get like weird things that pop up out of it, you know, like, so fire extinguishers, like people will thin down paint and fill up fire extinguishers and, you know, be able to paint giant tags on like huge buildings
with a fire extinguisher,
because it's cheaper than spray paint and you can go bigger.
Yeah. You can cover a whole wall.
You know, and then you have like straight letters, which is like bucket paint. You can go down to the dump and get, you know, free paint that people tried to throw away. And so instead of spending money on spray paint, what some of these guys will do is go down there, get some bucket paint, grab a ruler, and do straight letter pieces. So literally just like big block letters, you know, and line it with one color, fill it with another color. And it's a cheap way to like get up and also cover up the entire piece that the other person might have done at the same time.
Wow.
You know, and so...
It's competitive as hell.
Yeah, super competitive. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. But it's, you know, it all started off as, I think, a game to some degree, really. Like, you look at the history of it.
The history of graffiti.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you get all these weird things that pop up. I know there's some people, especially, I think Brazil is where it's biggest. They'll take garden sprayers, you know, that you would normally use for, like, pesticides.
Yeah.
And
fill it with paint
or ink, and then fill it up with enough pressure and modify the nozzle a little bit so you can get a really nice spray pattern out of it. So they'll be going around doing tags with that because it's cheaper than spray paint.
And faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And you look at all of these things and you dissect down like what they really are. And then you look at what current muralists are doing, and it's like all of these techniques that wouldn't be around without graffiti.
Yeah.
You know, and they're just applying them in a way that's, I guess publicly it would be considered like more palatable, you know?
Yeah.
But without that, we wouldn't have what we currently do as far as like
all
big
the
public works of
and,
art.
Yeah.
And, yeah, exactly.
Everything that was developed because it was so clandestine, underground kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, you look at how they were practicing, you know, they weren't like, some of them were practicing in the public eye, of course. You know, you have people like Chrome out in Miami that got really notorious
for his graffiti.
For graffiti, for doing highway signs. You know?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like when you're driving into town, into Miami.
You'll see his tags.
Yeah, and then you have other people that were just like practicing in abandoned buildings and stuff like that, you know, so that way they could take a little bit more time.
Yeah.
I know in New York, there was a tunnel that I believe got nicknamed Freedom Tunnel because it was a closed off tunnel that somebody, I'm pretty sure I'm right about how this happened. I think somebody blew a hole in a wall with like some construction explosives to like an abandoned tunnel. And then it was like they were able to walk through the hole, and like there was this whole big abandoned tunnel that they would like do graffiti in.
Get out of here.
Yeah, I think it's called Freedom Tunnel. I'm pretty sure.
I'm gonna have to look that up. That's cool.
Yeah, and I think one of the writers, I'm not sure if the tunnel was named after him or if he took up the name Freedom after spending time in the tunnel, but I know one of the writers, Freedom, was very well known for doing like big long murals about the history of graffiti down in the Freedom Tunnel, which I thought was really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's not everybody's vibe because of course there were like homeless people and you know, when you're starting out, I spent a lot of time in abandoned buildings. You know? And the homeless people don't really bother you ever, you know. I think it's more like intimidating for most people, but to be honest, like they're just looking for somewhere to sleep.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, to chill.
They're just regular people, man. They're
not. And they'll come over, you know, and like, but they just want to like sit down and talk and have a bottle of water and chill, you know, because you're at that point, you guys are basically there doing the same thing, you know.
Yeah.
And so, it's not everybody's vibe, but it really is. It's like, it is a very beautiful, like genuine human interaction. So I think that aspect of the Freedom Tunnel interested me as well, because you had this meeting of like graffiti culture and then also like people living underground in New York, like this big bustling city, and then like you have this whole like secret community almost.
Yeah, like this little secret room that everybody kind of knows about. That's so cool. Yeah, it's
you know, there's all these like little nooks and crannies of graffiti history, and I think so there's like varied reports of where it started, right? Where I heard it started was with a man named Taki, who was a Greek immigrant, and he was like riding the subway all the time and decided that he just wanted to see his name places. Like he would see big brand names on the billboards and stuff like that, you know, and he was like, I want to see my name.
Yeah, I want to put my name up there.
And so he just started writing his name on shit, like his actual name, not even like a graffiti name. And then I think it was like,
just his name. And
then I know there were 3 numbers after it. I think it was, oh God, I'm gonna get destroyed for not knowing this, but I think it was like 183163 or something like that, which I think was literally just his address.
Oh, wow.
So it was like his name and address is what his vandalism was.
Unique tag.
Yeah. But you know, when you think about it, starting kind of so innocently, you know, it's like literally just a guy that came to the U.S. that just wanted to see his name up on billboards and stuff. It's like
so cool.
Yeah, it's cool to think about what it's evolved into.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Banksy? Because he started as a muralist.
Yeah. So it's mixed.
Yeah.
It's mixed. I think Banksy is an amazing artist. I think conceptually he's very on point and does a lot of really interesting works. I think where I get derailed is his involvement with the graffiti community and not following some of those unspoken rules. You know, one of the big ones is if you are going to go over somebody else's piece, you cover up the whole thing.
Not just a piece of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You cover up the whole thing. It's a respect thing, you know, because that person doesn't necessarily want to do a collaboration with you, so don't use a piece of their art like they did want to, you know. And one of the big things Banksy did is there was a writer named King Robbo, and in I believe it was London, and he had this piece that had been there for a really long time, and Robbo had kind of stopped writing at this point, and nobody had gone over it because it was like such a respected thing. I mean, it was like at the top of a subway tunnel, and people were like, how did he even get up there?
Yeah.
You know?
Like, how did that happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so nobody really wanted to mess with it. So Banksy did, there's a term called the buff man in graffiti. And the buff man is basically a city worker that gets paid to go out and just paint over graffiti, right? Or, you know, use chemicals to take it off of stuff, things like that. So Banksy
just clean it up.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Banksy decided to do a buff man, like in the process of buffing out this King Robbo piece, you know, with a stencil and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was super controversial because he was basically using somebody else's piece for his art. And not only that, but he was covering up like a very notable piece that had been up for a really long time, which is another thing. Like, you don't go over pieces that have been there for a long time, you know, because that person's kind of earned their ups, you know. And so it was a really big deal because he broke a myriad of those rules, and it ended up in this like big feud that went back and forth for a really long time between Banksy and King Robbo. And it ended up being good for both of them. You know,
it always is.
Yeah, it ended up being good for both of them. Robbo because he was beefing with Banksy, you know, which I think he did end up passing away. I think he was like painting either a mural or he might have been doing graffiti. I'm not sure which, but he did end up passing away, and you know, it was a super tragic thing. However, you know, the whole beef with Banksy did have this like meteoric rise for him because he went from somebody that was like kind of retired to all of a sudden being like, no, fuck this. This guy's not just going to go over my piece and get away with it. So he started going over Banksy's stuff, you know. And so that whole aspect of it, I think, is a little bit questionable, you know, because even if you are doing more street art stuff, then you still are aware of the rules, you know.
But I think he's more about making statements than the art itself. I think he's a great artist. I mean, I love the work that he does, but I think he's more of a making statements kind of guy.
Yeah.
I think he may have done that just to make a statement.
Yeah. I think you also have to know, though, when you have a reputation like that, kind of like the repercussions of the statements you make or how you make the statement, right? Because there's other examples of, you know, I believe he did graffiti on a prison while a prisoner was escaping and like posted a video of it. Right?
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And now they ended up shutting down that prison because of it, and they're making an arts center, which sounds like a really great thing. But I think if you look at it kind of from like a public perspective, well, now you're like relocating prisoners. You know what I mean? And it kind of like gunks up the system and everything like that, because at this point you do know that cities or property owners, whoever, are going to do whatever they can to protect that, because now the value of their property skyrocketed, you know. And so I think you do have to understand like the impact and the way that you make those statements.
Oh yeah, there's definitely unintended consequences to his actions.
So I think that's what trips me up is it's not that I don't necessarily dislike it. It's just, I think that at this point it's happened enough times where there are like just weird unintended consequences that you should have you should probably, I mean, I'm sure he or they have thought about it.
Yeah.
You know,
they're just about the headlines, man.
Yeah.
They're not, I'm sure they're not too worried about the repercussions.
Yeah, exactly. But that is, you know, that is the one thing that kind of trips me out.
Yeah. I think my favorite thing from him was when he auctioned that painting, and then like immediately after the auction ended, it shredded. Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah, I did really like that.
I love that because there's a lot of people with money that have zero talent that have turned people's art into this huge business that just it's made to just make themselves richer, and it's like, no, this is my art. You know,
well, I mean, there are very like well-known examples of people after the passing of Keith Haring. Keith Haring was like so influential and so unique that he kind of left this void of people wanting more from him, especially because he died so young, you know? And because of that void, there were people that were kind of able to just come along and imitate his style as far as the execution of it goes and like the general aesthetic, not necessarily just straight up ripping off his characters because they haven't done that. But you know, it definitely is very reminiscent, much more reminiscent than I think a lot of people would prefer. Some people would prefer, you know, and because of the void he left, they've been able to kind of just take that and be like, okay, I'm successful now, and become very successful off of just filling that void that somebody else left.
Yeah,
you know, and that I think is where the business aspect of it gets me a little bit, you know, because to make it to that,
a lot of politics.
Yeah, it's a lot of politics, and to make it to that point, you have to have some kind of passion for it. So why not try to just find a voice that's unique to you instead of just filling a void that somebody else left? You know, if that void was left because of how impactful they were, then let that void be there and let people feel that void.
Yeah.
You know, and understand what it feels like to no longer have that person creating what they were creating that made that space feel full to begin with, you know?
Yeah. No, that's a good concept, man.
Yeah.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah, I mean, he's made quite a few statements in his life.
Yeah.
So I think he's the most influential artist in our lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Whether people like him or not, you know, he's made the most.
It would be
changes
hard to argue that he isn't. You know, I mean,
have you seen the documentary? Yeah.
Yeah, the documentary was super interesting.
I love that.
I think what I like most about him, right? If I was going to have to, like, because like I said, conceptually, I do really like Banksy a lot.
It's just his disregard for
for
the industry, basically.
Yeah, exactly. What I do really like about him is I personally have this obsession with taking imagery that might not have been accepted yet in the fine art community and making it accepted, right? So things like folk art or traditional tattoos, things like that. I think he kind of did that in the same way to a degree with graffiti. I think a lot of graffiti people would disagree with me because it's not letters and he's not a writer and he is viewed more as a street artist, right? But having Banksy kind of stick his foot in that door and then eventually blow the whole door off the hinges did make a lot of room for other people that were interested in pursuing a career with spray paint, you know? And so I do think, regardless of what you think about him and his impact on the graffiti community, it would be hard to argue that he hasn't done a lot to help make it more acceptable.
The industry as a whole,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and he's made a mockery of the parts that he doesn't like. Like the business and the money and all that stuff. Yeah, I love that. I love all the statements that he makes. But yeah, I agree with you. He's kind of almost like an artist terrorist. Where he just does it and then just whatever happens.
I think there's what a lot of people don't realize is when you get to those real big bucks like auction houses and stuff like that, you know, like they're really crazy stuff. A lot of it is being done because very wealthy people are trying to find ways to not pay as much taxes.
Yeah.
You know, sorry.
That's so true.
It's and I think he was very aware of that and continues to be very aware of that. And it's kind of refreshing to see somebody that is in those auction houses and they still want to buy his stuff despite him being obviously opposed. You know?
Yeah, it's like you don't get why. Like you just don't get it, you know? It's like you're still trying to just chase that dollar and it's like you're just defeating the purpose of the art. Yeah.
I have very business-minded people approach me frequently, you know? And they kind of approach me from the aspect of a small business owner, which I get, you know, and they'll come up to me and, you know, try to make recommendations on like, I should like go to this convention or do something with a car dealership or, you know, all kinds of stuff that would involve basically just like a lot of business footwork and networking and things like that to me. And I always end up having to explain to him, like, you know, I do appreciate the advice. And I do make money off this, yes. But that's just not how I want to approach it, because long term, when I look at my career, the way I envision my style and my career and what I see that I want to do, I just don't think is possible through looking at it like a business, you know? And so I do have to have that conversation with people a lot, you know, of like, they're like, well, you should treat it more like a small business. And I'm like, you know, I do to a degree, but I just can't if I want to accomplish what I want to accomplish. At least for me personally, I can't.
Yeah, you can't just take every mural project that comes your way, because then the money will come and go, but then that legacy stays.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what you'll leave behind.
And two, it's like some of it has to do with just like the amount of time you spend thinking about things, you know, like 90% of my day I spend thinking about what I draw or what I paint, critiquing myself, what I might want to do tomorrow, what other people are doing, you know. And if I was too busy thinking about all the business aspects of stuff, then
your creativity takes a backseat.
Yeah, almost. The time has to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
You know?
That's why I'm starting to get to that point too in this business, where it's like my creativity's starting to take a little bit of a hit because of all the business stuff that I have to do. So I think I'm to the point now where I'm going to start to kind of push that off on somebody.
Yeah.
So that I can go back to doing what I love, doing, you know, the creating, you know, the creative process.
Yeah.
And just kind of let somebody else take over the business side of it.
My wife is potentially the least interested in art person I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I absolutely adore that, because the art community does have the occasional pretentious person. And it can be a lot sometimes, you know. And the one thing I've always told her is, like, the second I make enough money for you to quit your job, you're going to quit your job and just do all of the business stuff I don't want to do for me, because she's a banker and loves it.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, dude,
perfect match.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm giving you the password to my emails, my Instagram, you know, like everything. You're going to have everybody's phone numbers, you know, and it's like, you're just going to do all of it for me, because it's so much and it takes up so much time, you know?
Yeah.
And if I really want to be, you know, remembered long term, then the only path forward for me is just like constant progression, you know?
Yeah, consistency.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we've talked about that on the podcast. Consistency, man. Even if it's, like you said, just a regular 8x8 wall, you know, just a practice wall every single day. That consistency over time eventually will get you to where you want to go.
Yeah. And I think you have to have consistency in the right areas, though, you know, because I was listening to an artist talk recently, and they made a lot of points that I agreed with, but there was one that I disagreed with. And they were talking about how they filled up a sketchbook, and every single day it had 365 pages in the sketchbook. Every single day they did a different sketch.
Holy crap.
And I've done that with my wall as of the 25th.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 365 murals over 365 days. It was a couple more than that, because there were some days where I did two. But I think it was the same with her sketchbook, you know. And she was talking about how part of the reason she did it is because she wanted to break the habit of feeling like she needed to create something new every time she created. And that was the only thing that I disagreed with. And I don't think you need to create something completely unique every time. But I do think conceptually it needs to be unique every time, right? Because that's the only way that you're going to, you know, force that type of like rapid expansion that you're looking for, if you're willing to put yourself through something like that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because it's grueling.
It is.
Yeah. And
just imagine 300-something sketches a day. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think you do have
how
to.
How fast you are. It's going to take hours out of your day.
Like mine, I do a different character every day. You know, there were, in the beginning, I did do the same character quite frequently, you know, and I think, again, that was just me not realizing I had the building blocks to do more. But then I did. And I kind of realized that the only way to really push that progression as fast as I was hoping for it to happen was to force myself to do something completely different every day, because it was going to make me uncomfortable every day, and
seek discomfort. I always say that.
Yeah. And so I wasn't going to have that safety net to fall back on, but it is important, if you're going to do something like that, where conceptually you're looking for something different every day, that you have the technical skills to back it up, right? Because the last thing you want is to be thinking, okay, I think I know what I'm doing with this character, but I'm also not sure on how to execute it. It's like, no, you want the execution like drilled into the back of your head, and then you can think about, okay, what am I doing with this character, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you just look at an image and you're already deconstructing it and figuring out how to. Yeah.
So I think it is important to do, if you're going to do something like that, to do something different every day. And it's going to suck. And there's going to be some days that are harder than others. And inevitably by the end of it, you're going to be pretty worn down and tired. But
that's the point, though.
That's the point.
Yeah, it's practice. It's not supposed to be easy.
Yeah, exactly. And it, like I keep saying, it all boils down to discipline. Mm-hmm. It's like, I think the definition is like to train oneself to do something habitually and repetitively. It might be habitually and consistently. I don't know. I'm not actually that smart, so.
You're inspiring, though.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. That's why I wanted to bring you on, man, because I knew you and I would have a great conversation.
Yeah.
Because we're both creatives, man. We both know like what it's like to live off of our art.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
And I mean, because of the way that I've gone about it, as far as not wanting to look at it from a business, in the beginning, there were other sacrifices that I had to make. When I left the insurance job, I still had to have money coming in, so I ended up taking this job with a company that I ended up loving dearly.
Yeah.
It's called Valet Living. And you basically haul trash from apartment complexes. You might have it here.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't like it. And normally when you see people that don't like it, they're like, it's because it's hard. That's what it boils down to. It's just hard. It's hard. It's an easy job, but physically it's really hard, Yeah. And I loved that aspect of it, because then I had something that was like conceptually very difficult that I was doing during the day, and it was very draining in that way. And then I could just go and pick up trash. It was like 150 flights of stairs every night.
It's a workout, dude.
Dude, it's a workout.
Yeah.
And you have like this bag that by the end of it weighs anywhere from like 60 to 150 pounds on your back, right?
Wow.
And it's so grueling physically that I just absolutely adored it, because I had the mental grueling aspect during the day, and then I had the physical at night to balance it out.
Yeah.
And I think it was the perfect thing for me to make that transition, because it really taught me a lot about like what it takes and how hard it can actually be. But also it taught me a lot about consistency, because it's super hard to call off when you're doing a job like that. And, it's one of those, it taught me a lot, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And I encourage people, if you are going to go down that route, of trying to make money off of your passion, don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone to, make money in other ways that won't limit that creativity, but also might not take as much time as like an office job, because I think eventually the money matched what I was making at an office job in less time, just because I was willing to work so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're independent like that, the harder you work, the more you make. So it's like you kind of create your own paycheck almost.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people are scared to take that step.
They're afraid to step away from the security, that secure paycheck that guaranteed every 2 weeks or whatever. Yeah. It was hard for me, man.
Yeah.
That was the scariest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
To step away from my job.
I thought I thought it was going to be really scary. I think that's what kept me from doing it for a really long time. And then I think I was just so fed up with the normal stuff by then that I don't actually remember feeling scared.
Yeah.
I think the scariness came actually. So like I said, I had this theory of people would eventually come to me if I got good enough. And they started, right? And I went through like a 3-month period where I was like booked solid. And then I got like a week away from having nothing booked. Nothing. And I was like, oh,
what the
what do I do? Because I was like, I didn't start this really.
Yeah.
It just kind of fell in my lap. And I was like, so how do I continue it if I didn't start it? And then I think that's when the fear set in. And I think like literally the next day, I got an offer to do like a consistent live painting thing and,
Nice.
somebody to give me paint and stuff like that. So it did end up working out like I had hoped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get like that too, man, where it's like there's nothing booked. Like you look at the week ahead and there's literally nothing.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy shit, man, how am I going to make rent this month?
Yeah.
But then something comes in, man, and and you got to keep networking too, man.
Yeah.
You got to keep making those connections because that's actually where most of my jobs are coming in now. Because I used to, go out and just do all this marketing and all this stuff. But now it's like, people know people and tell people about me, and it's like people come to me now.
Yeah. I think for me it is networking, but I don't think it's intentional for me personally. No. Just because like I just really like to paint, that I always like preface whenever people meet me, I'm like, I just like to paint. I'm a guy that likes to paint. That's pretty much, that sums up my entire existence, and I think because of that, people recognize that, and then inadvertently it causes a lot of networking, what I mean? And so you're right, it is a really important, like it's a super important aspect of it, and I think everybody has like their own way of going about it, or like their own reason it comes about, or I don't know how wedding photographers do it. I think about them sometimes and like how they have to network to do it, and I'm like, it gives me anxiety just thinking about it.
I have to do that.
Sorry about the tangent on that. It's just like
every time I do weddings too. So
every time I talk to somebody that does wedding photography, I'm like, how do you even book stuff? Because it's like there's so many options, and with cameras being more accessible nowadays than they've ever been, people seem to value having a good photographer less, which is like weird, because you would think they've tried it enough to know that they're not good at it. No offense, but most people aren't good at photography.
Now, no offense to any photographers that are listening, but
no, I meant like not photographers. I was talking about like just people taking selfies and stuff like that for weddings. You would think that they would realize like, hey, it would look better if I had a professional photographer.
An actual photographer. Yeah.
Sometimes no.
Because I mean, phones have gotten so good nowadays that it kind of blurs the background for you. Like it creates all these filters that make you look amazing. So I think photography has kind of been watered down a little bit. That's why I kind of specialize in the videography, because that's a specialized skill set. It doesn't matter how good your phone is, you're not going to make a video like me.
Yeah, man.
But photography, man, everybody's a photographer nowadays. It's like people show up and it's like you see people at weddings just with their phones, and it's like, that's all they have.
Yeah.
That's all they need.
Yeah.
But it's a different skill set, honestly.
So what got you into like videography and just production and everything like that?
Dude, honestly, I've always been into storytelling. I've always been into my degree is actually in animation. I'm a 2D 3D artist.
Oh, that's so brutal. That's such a brutal medium.
I love it.
Respect, man.
I love it. It's very technical, for sure. Very, very technical, especially if you're going to do it on the computer or an iPad or something. But so I started off in doing animation, and it just kind of, I learned the skills that I needed to make movies, the camera angles, the lighting, all that stuff, because it doesn't matter if it's physical or digital, it's all the same. So when I kind of left school, I got my degree, I started trying to go into the industry, and I noticed that Florida is really not huge on animation. It's all out west. It's all in the California or even overseas. So I was like, so what can I do with all these skills? Like, what can I transfer them to? And the easiest thing was just video. Like, just buy a camera, and then I don't have to worry about render times and all this other shit that I have to worry about on the computer. Now it's just, you get a person, you sit them in front of the camera, you turn it on, and that's it. You got your video, right? So, so I found that was a good outlet for me, that I could still tell my stories. I could still, make the content that I wanted to create, and be creative that way. And man, I've been doing it ever since. Yeah,
that's super cool.
Yeah, I love it, man.
I
love everything about the process. I've talked about this before. I actually started as a YouTuber. Like I wanted to, back when I actually had a full-time job and I was just kind of doing this on the side. I started doing a YouTube channel, and I wanted to be a travel vlogger. Because I love traveling. So like me and my brother, we took a road trip from Florida.
I mean, who doesn't want to be a travel vlogger?
Exactly.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. So I was watching all these guys on YouTube, and I was like, man, I could do that. Like, and I bought a camera, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. So me and my brother, we took a road trip from here to Washington State. It took us 7 days or 8 days to get there, and documented the whole way. Created a really cool series, but it got to the point where it was like I was spending more on the travel than I was making on the YouTube channel. It just wasn't sustainable to me at that point. So, but I already had all the equipment. I had already had everything. So I was like, you know what, let me just shift over. Instead of telling my stories, I'm going to tell other people's stories. So I started to get clients, and yeah, man, here we are.
Yeah, that's super cool. It sounds a lot like how I've heard some people get into writing. It's like a very similar way, They like meet people that inspire them to come up with a character. And then they like flesh out that character based on the experiences they've heard from the person they met, and it sounds like you're kind of doing a similar thing with the way that you do storytelling when it comes to videography. Like you meet somebody and you get a gist for kind of who they are and how they go about their life, and you're able to build a story off of that.
Yeah.
So it sounds really similar to writing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I see the stories everywhere, man. That's why when I met you, I was like, this dude has a story.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to bring you on, man. I'm glad you came on.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I was excited because I am just so focused all the time on just painting and having fun with that, and showing people all these images, like traditional images that I fell in love with, that I really forget to tell people like about myself sometimes, So more often than not, I get people that recognize my art before they recognize me, or, feel like they know anything about me. In order to combat that, I kind of like always wear the same thing, like different clothes, but I always wear a white shirt with black pants. Beard stays pretty long. Yeah. Beanie.
It's your image, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Same jewelry.
That's why I always wear my BlueBox shirt, my BlueBox hat.
Yeah. Yeah.
My glasses. This has kind of like become iconic almost.
Yeah. Yeah. People in the art community recognize me super consistently now. Nice. But when it comes to the public, it still tends to be they recognize my work before me.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to change too with this podcast, because I bring all these artists that they put on this, I wouldn't say a facade, but they only post like what they want to post, right? But when they come in here, they get an hour to talk about whatever they want, themselves and how they grew up and all the challenges that they've had to go through.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You get to know the artist.
Yeah, definitely.
I actually had a guest on here, and he was asking me a bunch of questions, and I was like, yeah, I appreciate that, because normally it's a one-sided thing, but then he kind of said, it's good to know the story of the storyteller.
Yeah, I watched that episode.
Yeah, I like
that was a super good episode. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm glad, man. I'm glad that we have the space that we could just, creatively, because I don't see a lot of this stuff online, man. No. A lot of like creative people, it's always just all art, all the rappers or all, they specialize in something. But I just love the creative space so much.
The meeting
here.
ground is nice. Yeah. Are you from Florida originally?
Originally, no. I'm from Puerto Rico, but I pretty much grew up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I came here when I was like 13, 14, so.
Yeah. My wife is, her, like an entire half of her family is all from Puerto Rico.
Nice.
And they're like beautiful, crazy, wonderful people.
Yes. It's such a beautiful culture, man.
Yeah.
It's so welcoming, so very artistic, very musically inclined.
Yeah.
Culture.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of my stuff kind of stems from my upbringing and the experiences that I've had growing up as a Puerto Rican in America, looking like a white boy.
Yeah, I have that same problem, man.
Yeah.
My dad is Iroquois, Native American. Yeah. And I'm very pale for
for Native
for
American.
being very Native American. Yeah. I say I'm Native American, and people are always like, they make the joke like, what, like 1/32 or something?
Yeah,
like no, like half. Literally
half.
Yeah. my wife and I always joke, because she's kind of the same as you. She looks super white, but she's half Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
You know? We always joke that we're going to have a kid, and it's going to be...
I'm full Puerto Rican, and I'm still white.
Really? Sorry, I thought you were saying your parents met here, but you said you grew up there.
Puerto
yeah,
Rico,
so
yeah,
straight up
all the way.
Yeah.
Yep.
So she looks very white as well. She's like red hair, freckles. She almost looks Irish, but she's not, you know.
Yeah.
And we always joke that we're going to have a kid, and it's going to come out so dark that I'm going to be like, is this my child, you know? And like, just as a joke, because my dad was so dark, dude.
Wow.
Like thick black hair, like the most stereotypical Native American. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And same with her parents, you know, and so we always joke about it. And then I met somebody one day that actually happened to, you know, where like his parents were both like half, and then I think his dad was half Brazilian, his mom was half Argentinian or something like that. And they both looked super white, and then he came out like very dark skinned.
Really dark.
And I was like, and so it went from a joke to like an actual thing that my wife and I had a conversation about, you know, because we were like, if we do ever decide to have kids, you know,
you got to watch out.
Yeah. You know, yeah.
That's too funny. I actually have a brother. He's been on the podcast before, Lex the barber. He has really dark skin. Like we look like brothers, but like if you just look at a glance, it's like, holy shit, yeah, these guys are not related.
Yeah.
And we've had to deal with that our whole lives, man. It's like, do you have the same parents? Yep, 100% same parents.
That's cool.
Just different skin tone. You know? It's in the blood. It's in the Puerto Rican blood.
The first time my wife ever saw a picture of my father, because she never met him, he passed away, and the first time she ever saw a picture of him, she looked at my mom and she was like, "Oh, you were married twice?" And my mom was like, "No," you know. And she was like, "Oh, then who's this guy?" You know, it was like literally a picture of them at the altar, and she was like, "That's Zach's dad." And she was like, "Adopted?" And she was like, "No, he's not adopted. That's his father. That's his dad." You know.
My mom has had to deal with that our whole lives.
Yeah.
When she introduces us, they're like, "Yeah, same husband, same father."
Yeah. Yeah.
Just kind of preface it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm from Ohio originally.
Okay.
Like the middle of nowhere to begin with, you know. And eventually we ended up moving to like a bigger city, you know, Columbus. Yeah. Because the small town, it technically wasn't even big enough to be its own town.
Oh, wow.
It was just the middle of nowhere, super basically.
Tiny,
yeah. Had one corner store.
It's like a little township.
Yeah. And the corner store looked like something out of a Western movie. Nice. Like when you walked into it, the boards were so old that you could like see through the bottom to like the dirt under the...
Get out of here.
Yeah. And it was super cool because I always joked that they basically only sold like Lay's and Coke. You know, you know, that was like pretty much it. And it burned down. And just like, I mean, it was going to happen eventually, dude. The whole thing was like a fire hazard for at least 20 years before it actually burned down, you know?
Like a tinderbox.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it was going to happen eventually. I don't think anybody was too shocked, but because of that, a lot of people ended up moving out of that little town, including us. Because you like, if you just wanted, like, if you forgot something to drink or wanted a snack,
you had to drive like an hour.
Dude, I think it was, I don't think it was an hour. I think it was like 30, 40 minutes, but still,
yeah. Like every time you gotta have to plan ahead. Yeah. My ex-wife used to live in a like little in the middle of nowhere, little town. And it was like that, man. Like anytime you wanted to go to the corner store was like a couple miles away. Like you had to travel, you had to plan it ahead of time. Yeah. That's crazy, man. So what brought you to Florida?
Like most things in my life, it was random.
Yeah.
Yeah. I met who's now my wife. Her name is Anissa. And I had met Anissa just randomly. We decided to go on a date. We really liked each other. And then I think we went on 2 more dates. And then she started essentially living with me, right?
Nice.
Just like staying over all the time, but she never really went back to her place after that. And both of us were happy with that. You know, we just instantly really liked each other's company. And
that's awesome.
I had this goal of, okay, you know, 2 years from now, I'm going to move out of the state. I don't know where, but I don't want to be stuck here my whole life. Because a lot of people that grow up rural Ohio. That's where they stay.
This is all back in Columbus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I told her, I think it was only like 2 weeks into spending a lot of time with her. I was like, hey, in 2 years, I'm leaving the state. I don't know where I'm going. You can come with me or you cannot come with me, but I just don't want to get your hopes up that I'm going to be here forever if you're interested in being here forever,
That's not my plan.
Yeah. She was like, no, I'm down. And I was like, okay.
Ride or die.
Yeah.
Love it.
Let's do it. And so we sat down and we thought of a bunch of states that we would be interested in moving to. And we listed all the major cities within those states. And then we put it into a random name generator.
Nice.
And St. P is what popped up.
That's awesome.
And so I live in St. Petersburg now.
That is such a cool story. Like it's just random. Whatever name pops up, that's where we're going.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't have picked a better spot, man. Like the whole Tampa Bay, St. Pete area. I love it, especially for artists.
Yeah, I didn't know that when I moved here, man.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
We moved
You
here.
lucked out.
Dude, I was living in historic Kenwood. I was like renting this back house, and it was right down the street from downtown. So we moved here. I think we spent like 2 days unpacking stuff. And then we started walking around downtown. And I started noticing that there were like so many galleries and art shops and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, I got pretty lucky, man.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
That random word generator was right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was chance. I like when you leave things to chance and they work out like that, man.
Mm-hmm.
It was meant to be.
Yeah. I just, I also am not convinced that I'll be here permanently either. You know, I'm sure I'll be here for a long time, but I kind of knew that once you make that commitment to just, travel around until you find somewhere that you feel like spending the rest of your life, then it gets pretty easy to do it a second time. I feel like it's the first time that's really difficult.
Yeah. It's the unknown. Like you've never gone through it. Like this is home. This is where you grew up. This is where all my memories are kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I first moved here from Puerto Rico, man, it was tough. It was tough. I didn't have any friends.
Yeah.
It was really lonely for a couple of years, especially for a kid that speaks only Spanish. I had an accent. I don't know. I guess I lost it.
Yeah.
Throughout the years, but yeah, I used to have a Hispanic accent. Let's talk about your name.
Yeah.
Hinson the Healer. Where'd that come from?
Hinson the Healer. So I got really obsessed with American traditional tattooing and folk art in general. So I wanted to learn how to paint flash, like how they used to, like back in the day when they first started doing it, which is a process called spit shading. Okay. And it's called spit shading because you use your spit. It's kind of gross by today's standards, but it's very cool. It's a cool kind of forgotten art form to know how to do, And so it's basically India ink and watercolor and calligraphy tools. And so I decided that I was going to learn how to paint flash. I started painting flash for this guy. I was starting to get pretty good at it. And he wanted flash to hang up on his walls anyway, so it worked out for both of us.
Nice.
And he was like, if you're going to be hanging around here, you got to have a nickname. Because I was just this guy hanging around in this like old school kind of hardcore tattoo shop, named Zach.
Nice.
And everybody else had like these cool like biker nicknames, And he found out that I was half Native. And he started like brainstorming like Native American nicknames, I guess. And most of them sounded horrible and goofy. And none of them really stuck. I don't think anybody really liked any of them. And then one day I was kind of joking around and I said, Hinson the Healer. And he said, you don't get to pick your own nickname. And then he like walked
Until
away. Well, he walked away and then sat back down and pretended like we hadn't talked yet that day. And then called me Hinson the Healer. So basically like claiming it.
Yeah. Like he came up with it.
Yeah. Which was really funny. And it just kind of stuck, and I really liked it. So I just started introducing myself as that. He started introducing me to people as that. And at first I kind of forgot like who knew me by what name, because some people still knew me as Zach at the time. But I also wasn't as well known at the time. So that ended up going away pretty quickly. So there was like a short phase where I would introduce myself as like Hinson the Healer, you know, because I just didn't know.
Yeah.
But then
just cover all bases.
Yeah, just to cover all the bases. But now it's just Hinson the Healer because most people just know me by that. I think people think the word Hinson is a made up word though, which is like a weird thing that I run into. You know?
Really?
Yeah, because they'll find out my full name and they'll be like, "Oh, that's actually your name," and I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah." What did you think Hinson meant? You know, it's. I always like daydream about if the word Hinson was just like a normal vocabulary word in the dictionary, like what its definition would be, because people always seem so surprised to
That's a name? What?
Yeah, to think it's a name. And so I always like daydream about like what would the definition of that
Yeah,
word
I don't think it's, in my mind, it's not anything but a name.
Yeah.
Hinson.
I like to imagine that it's like some sort of carpentry term.
Nice.
That I'm just not aware of. You know what I mean? Like
Nice.
some obscure carpentry tool that's like
Pass me that Hinson. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's why people are confused. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why. We'll chuck it up to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's cool, man. So what's next for you? What's coming up for Hinson the Healer? Got any competitions or anything?
Yeah, always, man.
Always.
You know,
Didn't you say that you do one like once a month or try to?
at least once a week.
At one competition a week?
Yeah.
Wow.
If not a competition live painting, it depends if I can find somebody,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, so I do that at normally Rush Hour Chicken and Waffles. It's a chicken and waffles restaurant that turns into a nightclub at night.
Nice.
It gets pretty lit, I'm not going to lie.
Wow.
I wasn't expecting it when I first started doing stuff there, and then I showed up and I was like, whoa. Yeah.
This is different.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, you know, the people out there are super nice. And so I do that, you know, once a week, and I'm working on...
That's down in St. Pete?
Yeah, it's in St. Pete, yeah.
Okay. What was it called again?
Rush Hour's Chicken and Waffles.
Rush Hour's Chicken and Waffles.
Which is a nightclub.
I love it.
Yes.
I'm going to have to go check that out.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I just started doing
Is it a chicken
stuff.
and waffles restaurant during the day?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I would say it's more of like a bar that serves really good chicken and waffles during the day. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And I just did an event for Young Barbecue last night. Young Barbecue on Instagram. Her name is Lex. And she's a professional dancer. She's a really, really nice person. I wasn't sure what to think when I first met her, you know, because when you meet people that have a ton of followers, you never know kind of what their personality is going to be, or because you're meeting them at an event, you don't know if they're going to be stressed out or not. You know, like there's a lot that goes into that, man. So I just wasn't sure what to think when I first met her, you know, because I didn't know if she was going to be stressed out or like if this was going to be her actual personality or what. And she ended up being so nice, dude.
That's cool.
Just like a seemingly very genuine person, and you know, very nice. And so I think I'm gonna be doing more stuff with her events coming up, because she really liked what I did, and I really liked being there. So
well, what do you do for the events? Just
live
spray?
paint. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a travel wall that I built that's 8 foot by 8 foot.
Nice.
And I'll either do like a mural that people can auction off afterwards, or, you know, just like something for a photo opportunity.
Nice.
Or a lot of times people will see my work and just be like, just paint whatever you want.
That's
know?
cool.
Yeah. So I do a lot of events in that style. And then there was a clothing company that approached me to do like a limited edition artist series of t-shirts.
Nice.
And I've been going back and forth on that. And I think this week actually is my final meeting with them to like finalize the placement of everything. And yeah.
Damn, dude, you're killing it.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
Yeah, you're out there, man, and now you're here, so
Yeah.
hopefully this turns into something.
Yeah, like I said, I was just so stoked to come and, you know, have this conversation with you and just get to sit down and talk, because like you said, it is nice to talk to other creative people
It
and
is.
you know, other people that you just seem to be able to have a genuine conversation with. And
I remember when I was going to school for animation, it was so cool just being in that environment, man. And I miss that, you know, just being around the other creatives, just shooting ideas back and forth and just having these kind of conversations. Like,
yeah,
you don't get to have this kind of stuff every day with everyone, you know?
No, definitely not. Especially when people aren't involved full time a creative field.
Creative, yeah.
It's kind of hard for them to understand why you think about it so often or why you talk about it so often, you know, because it is kind of this all-consuming thing. And sometimes I do have to stop myself. Like I'll be sitting in a room with, I always call them adult people, you know, because I feel like to be an artist, you have to be at least a little bit childish. Yeah.
That inner child is still there. Yeah,
exactly. And so I'm sitting in a room with a bunch of adult people, and I'll have to stop myself from just like continually talking about creative things, because I realize that at this point
there's a disconnect.
Yeah, there's none of them are interested.
Yeah.
Anymore, you know?
You'll start to see them kind of dozing off and just not making eye contact, checking their phones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you made it, man. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we had this great conversation. We've been going over an hour now. So
okay.
Where can people find your stuff online?
Hinson the Healer on everything. HINSON. You know, I post on TikTok occasionally, but Instagram is kind of my bread and butter. You know,
where do you post your daily walls, or do you?
I do on my Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do a video and then normally a picture.
Nice.
You know, sometimes pictures that like photographers took of me, sometimes of the practice wall, sometimes of like gallery pieces I have coming up, or, you know, just all kinds of stuff like that.
That's cool, man. You're in all kinds of stuff, man. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Staying busy.
I like to paint.
Yeah.
You know? Like I keep saying, it's just like, that's what it boils down to, is just, I like to paint. So when people are like, hey, do you want to paint? I'm like, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. You know?
Doesn't matter what it is. I'll paint.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, thanks again for coming on and kind of sharing your story, and hopefully people are inspired by your story and, you know, kind of follow their dreams to paint and spray paint and do all the stuff that we do.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's I love talking about it, and I'm just so happy you had me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was a great conversation, man. It was one of my favorite episodes to shoot, honestly.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I had
an
absolute blast.
Yeah, thanks. And for us, it's BlueBox Podcast. If you want to check out on Instagram and TikTok, we post little highlights from the podcast on there. We're on YouTube, youtube.blueboxdigital.com. Just follow along there, and we post some behind-the-scenes stuff on there, too, not just the podcast. We just launched the merch store, so if you want to rock out the Blue Box, we got stickers, we got shirts, we got hats, all kinds of stuff. If you want to support the show, help us make more of this content to help inspire you guys. Yeah, and I think other than that, that's it, man. Thanks again.
Yeah, of course.
I appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, for sure.
And thanks you guys for watching. We'll see you guys in the next episode.